Hey, it's Sam on What Yacht To Do, and today aboard the Here's to Us, I'm going to be answering some questions that I get a lot about, hey, why are you putting your boat in winter storage, and how do you do it, what are some of the options? And then also, when you put it into winter storage, the second part of this is I'm going to be covering is how do you communicate to the yard the specifics about your particular boat. So let's start with the first one. Why would you put your boat in winter storage? And for many of the folks, hey, boating is a seasonal deal. So you are going to face winter where you're not going to be able to use your boat. Maybe you don't want to use your boat. The conditions are so harsh that, hey, I will be afraid that it would freeze. For loopers, pretty much the loopers are going around and they're avoiding the harsh winter because they're springing up the coast, the east coast in the spring. In the summertime, they're up in the Canada and Great Lakes region for the summer. They fall down and it might get a little chilly in the fall, but by the time you get to the Gulf, it's going to be winter and you're not going to have any freezing temperatures. So loopers, generally not, but in our case, we did winterize the boat a couple times, and so let's talk about that. The first two times we winterized the boat in the water. And that can be done if you're not in an area that it's going to freeze over. We winterized all the systems. In fact, we bought it in November of 2017, and a few days later, after the purchase was done, we were winterizing it. We weren't going to move the boat. We weren't going to put it on the hard and shrink wrap it. We left it in the water and we used bubblers. So we had a technician come out, winterize all the systems on the boat. The yard put bubblers on there so it wouldn't freeze, and it worked just fine. The next year we thought we were going to move the boat, and we didn't get to move the boat. We still had work that we were finishing up with. We had some unrealistic expectations of being able to start the loop, and we couldn't do it. So we went through the same process again. Winterize the boat, leave it in the water, the bubbler is on there, and so you take a little bit of a risk there in case the bubblers don't work or you get really harsh temperatures. So that's one way to do it. The other option at that time was for us to have the boat hauled out, put on blocks, of course winterized, and then sit on the hard, as they call it, in the yard. And whether you shrink wrap it or not, that's up to you. There's an additional cost for shrink wrapping and then also getting the shrink wrap off and disposed of. There's some costs with that, but then you are protecting your boat. Well, the next time that was winter, we were in the loop cycle and we were in the south. And so we were in Fort Myers area and the Keys, and we spent the winter down there just fine. So the next winter rolls around and we've finished our first loop, and now we're starting to think, hey, are we going to sell the boat? And there were tears in our eyes, and we said, no, we're not going to sell the boat. And about that time, that thing called the pandemic was encircling the world, and there were restrictions to get into Canada. So what we thought was a good idea was to take the boat up in the Alexandria Bay area and winterize it there, and then certainly those restrictions would be gone the next year and we would be able to get a jump into Canada early. Well, we did that. We hauled out. We had it put in inside winter storage. We had some work done on the boat, and we had communicated with the yard on all the particulars that we had on getting the boat out of storage. We actually saw the boat come out of the water. We were able to see it, say goodbye to it, and went back and waited for the spring to come. Well, the next time we thought we would finish the loop, and we spent another winter in the Fort Myers area, particularly the Cape Coral area. So then we finished the second loop, and at that time we're thinking we're going to sell the boat, and more tears in our eyes of selling the boat. And we said, you know what, where did we like to spend most of our time, what was most enjoyable? And we said, you know what, Canada and the Great Lakes. So instead of there was plan A to sell the boat, plan B to put it on the hard in the Washington, D.C. area at Harrington Harbor North. And I just started thinking about it. I go like, I can't do this to this baby. We need to put her inside in heated storage, and made arrangements to, okay, let's leave, let's get up to the Brewerton area and store her inside winter storage there. So that's where we are with it. A couple times we stayed on the boat in winter in the Florida area, a couple times in the water with bubblers, and 2 times inside winter storage. So we're going to talk about this winter storage inside mainly, and the process for doing that. Let me wrap up this first part here about, the pros and cons of storing your boat and why you would want to, by telling you why I like the inside heated winter storage. And again, for this year we are planning to do inside heated winter storage. When you think about the process of it, you've got to winterize everything on your boat, and this is a fairly complex boat. We've got 5 air conditioners, we've got a washer and a dryer. The dryer you don't have to winterize, but the washer. We've got sinks, we've got the galley, we've got 2 heads, 2 engines, a generator, and all that stuff. I just think it's a little harsh to put her outside with all that stuff, and somewhere, someplace, you may forget something. The other thing is that, hey, it's inside, you don't have to shrink wrap it, it's protected from the elements, and you can get some work done on the boat. I am personally a big fan of pulling a boat like this out of the water. Number one, you get to look at the bottom and see what's going on. That is a big deal for me, to be able to say that, hey, there's integrity around the bottom. Hey, some things have to be worked on. Depending on the yard that you go to, they may allow you to work on some of the things on your boat yourself. If you don't have the expertise, certainly a yard like that has the capability to pull a boat like this size out, has a lot of technicians around the area where you can get things done while she's in winter storage. Cosmetics, those types of things, because it's inside. Nobody's shrink wrapping their boat, although I have seen boats shrink wrapped inside a big building. But you'll be able to get things done like get it buffed, waxed, gel coat repair, all those things that you would maybe have the time to do during the summer, and then when it's summertime you get to pull it out. Now the cost on it, I've costed this out as to, okay, putting it on the hard, and leaving it out there with that shrink wrappage is probably the cheapest. Then you've got shrink wrappage on top of that. But then the winterizing of it is, if you could do it yourself and your time is your own time, that's not a big deal. But now you have to pay somebody to winterize it, check it, and you're leaving it out on the hard. For me, the cost is roughly the same, because you put that boat in winter storage, you don't have the winterization, you don't have the shrink wrap, and you have the opportunity to work on her as you go along. So for me, big deal. I like to have the Here's to Us inside winter storage. Now we have her scheduled to go inside winter storage in the Ohio area this time, because the plan is, if we don't sell the boat, and I think we're getting a little closer to saying, okay, maybe we'll sell the boat, then if we kept her, we're going to be exploring Lake Huron more, the North Channel, Lake Superior, and then the plan would be winterize her in the Green Bay area in a facility we already have our eyes on for the winter of 2024. Some of the rationale about why you would want to pull the boat out, the pros and cons of all the different types, and now let's talk about handing the keys over to somebody who is going to pull your boat out of the water. Alright, it's time to hand your baby over to the yard. You're going to be giving them the keys to the boat, and they are going to haul it out and put it inside heated winter storage. So let's think about that. It can be traumatic, thinking about handing your keys to a stranger. Maybe you know the yard, maybe you don't know the yard, maybe you've done it before. So you're going to have to think through all the systems, and that's what I do, is I think about giving them the keys. They're going to start the boat up, they're going to position it on the lift, they're going to haul it out, and they're going to put it inside, and then they're going to work on it. So I think through very first is, okay, the keys are in the ignition. Basically, I'm going to write all of the major things out on a piece of paper, and I'm going to leave it up here at the helm. The things that just starting the boat up and getting it to the lift. And then there are going to be some other things that we're going to communicate with the yard. There's going to be probably 3 or 4 pages of things that I think are important. And then once I get to the location, I'm going to schedule some time with the technician or the person who is going to take the boat out of the water, give them a tour of the boat, show them, see if they have any questions about it. Now, you may or may not be there when they haul the boat out of the water, so you're going to have to think through everything in case they have questions. You may know when they're going to haul the boat out, you may know when if they're going to block it on the outside and then later put it on the inside, but you want to make sure that you're kind of in the loop as to when that's being done in case there are questions about it, that they have your phone number. In the case where they're going to haul it out and put it on blocks, well, that means they're going to be handling it twice, but it's their yard and they know the scheduling of that. If you want to be there when they haul it out, you're going to have to work with the yard on that, because that may or may not interrupt their schedule depending on the time of the year it is. They may have a particular position in the barn, as they call it, as to where they're going to put you, so they may not be able to take you right out of the water and put you in that spot right away. So work with the yard to figure out the schedule. So it's the day of the haul out, and you have your note up here for the captain or the yard master who is going to operate your boat. He knows where the keys are, knows about starting it up. Generally, that's not a big deal for people on a strange boat. As a training and delivery captain, I have a process that I go through when I get on a strange boat. I want to know how to start it up. I want to know all the major systems. So let's just go through. We've got the keys. This boat has thrusters on it. It's got a bow and a stern thruster. And so there is a knob to energize those thrusters, and there's a button to energize both the bow and both the stern thruster. And so, you know, it may be a little different, so I'm going to go over that with the technician as well. Holding tanks, okay, you're probably going to want to pump out your boat. You are going to want to pump out your boat. Get those tanks as clean as you can. In the case that you can't do it, you can't get to the dock to pump out, then the technicians are going to go through and pump out your boat for you. So for that pump out, if there are any idiosyncrasies with your holding tanks, for example, on the Here's to Us, we have 2 heads, 2 tanks, and we have 2 separate receptacles for it. And for some reason, they both have different threads. So we had all that laid out for them, the receptacles that screw into there. We had that laid out and told them how to do it, because we simply could not position the boat to do it ourselves, and thought, well, we'll just pay them to pump out the heads. As well as if there's any deodorant that you want to put in there, position that so that they can do that, and kind of keeps the barn smelling a little bit better. Let's talk about that travel lift and the sling indicators that are on your boat. Are they accurate? Are they well marked for the crew? If not, you're going to have to talk to them ahead of time. Remember that note that you're going to prepare, and then you're going to go over that with that technician or yard master. Ours are inaccurate for the aft slings, and we noticed that during one of our first haul outs when we had to get hauled out for a prop, is that, wow, if we use the actual sling marks there, it's going to start to bear on the shafts. So we have now relocated those, and we kind of use a blue painter's tape to make sure that they know where those slings have to go. It's actually about 11 to 12 inches forward of the actual slings. Water on the boat. Okay, our boat carries, or has a capacity to carry 350 gallons of water. Now, we don't carry that much water. It's a lot of weight, but it could carry it. Let's say you're going to the Bahamas and wanted to make sure you had a lot of water. 350 gallons will take you quite some time to get through. So we carry routinely about 120 gallons, and it just so happens that this time we hauled the boat out. It had about 80 gallons in there, and we put a little bit of bleach in there to make sure that, hey, there wasn't any growth. So we're communicating with the yard about how much water is in there. Because we're not winterizing it, the systems, we don't have to drain anything out. Just leave it as it is. Not a big deal. Let's talk about fuel. The Here's To Us carries 688 gallons of diesel fuel in 4 separate tanks. Now you can read about the pros and cons of storing your boat with empty tanks, with full tanks. I'm kind of a halfway guy here as far as fuel, and I'm going to communicate to them about how much fuel is in each tank, each of my 4 tanks, and why. I'm actually going to take a picture of the gauges before I shut down. I'm not thinking that they're going to steal fuel from me, but I want them to know how much fuel is in there. Why? Because I'm going to have them add some biocide to the fuel, so they'll need to know how much is in there. Now, could I do it myself? Yes, I could. But in this case, I said, you know what? They've got the biocide there. I didn't have to order it, give it to them, and make sure it was put in. If they're going to do it, they'll know how much biocide to put in because they'll know how much is in each tank. The next thing that is peculiar to the Here's To Us is the engine room access. Not so much the engine room access, but it is a little bit, when people come on the boat to do work on the boat, they go, hey, how do I get in the engine room? Well, you have to go all the way forward and then lift up the stairs, and then you go, oh, I can kind of walk down into the engine room, but where's the light for the engine room? When I purchased the boat, the broker and I were looking for that engine room light. We could not find it, and we just looked up, and right there it was. So it's a pull switch there, and it illuminates the engine room. So I want to make sure that they know that. The other thing that is they're going to have access to the engine room for is the seacocks. And I wanted the seacocks checked for integrity, okay? So I have a special tool that was made, thanks to Taylor at the Pirates Cove Marina way back in, I think it was 2019. I can't reach those seacocks. They're so far outboard that I had a special tool to be able to activate those. And you'll want to exercise your seacocks every once in a while, but I want the technicians to check them when it's out of the water, activate them, look at them from the bottom, and see what the integrity is, because that's a major deal for this particular haul out over the winter, is to make sure that the integrity of the bottom is fine. And that goes for a lot of different things that I'm going to tell you about in the next video that we're going to ask them to do. So the access to the engine room and anything down there that you're going to want them to work on or have access to, explain that to them. One other piece of equipment that I want to make sure that they understand how it works is the Freedom Lift. Now the Freedom Lift, we don't currently have a dinghy on it, but I want them to know where it is, how it's powered, and how to activate it in case they need to activate it. Even though we don't have a dinghy on, I take care of that Freedom Lift and the motor. I check it out, make sure it works. We have 2 remote controls for it. So I am going to position them, because as they get it into the yard, maybe they have to move the arms a little bit to get equipment around. And also I'm going to have them do some work on the anodes that are all over that and the bottom of the boat, and they may have to activate it. So I'm going to give them instructions on that as well. The final part here, and I've left it to the end of the video, is the electrical system. And that to me is the most important part, because they are going to disconnect from the shore power. They are going to lift the boat out, put it inside, and from there the switches to me are important as to how that electrical system is going to be put into a state of storage. So I am going to write them a very detailed note. I'm going to tell them, hey, where the main breakers are, show them the rotary switches. For us, we have underneath the step the house panel, make sure that they know that that is there. The next thing is the DC panel and the AC panel. I'm going to go over that with them. explain to them that the boat has an inverter charger on board, where that inverter charger panel is, also where the inverter charger is located. It's located under our aft cabin master stateroom bed. Show them the switch on that, and then also I will probably tag a few different breakers to let them know. In addition to those panels, I also have a electronics circuit breaker panel below here, and I'm going to show them that and show them what's on that so that they can properly take care of the switches to make sure that there's minimal draw on the battery. There should be no draw on the battery when they put it into storage, and if in fact they do have to power it up for one of the maintenance items that I'm going to ask them to do, they know how to power it up. Our house bank batteries are 4 golf cart batteries, 6 volts, wired in a parallel series, so it gives me 12 volts. And then I have an 8D start battery on bank 2. I'm going to make sure that they know where those are. They're in the engine room, and all of the switches associated with the electrical system. It's the one thing that I kind of go overboard a little bit, but it is one of the items that when you own a boat, your electrical system will give you probably the most headaches, because it's got wires out to everything that works on the boat. And usually when Rev says, hey, this is not working, it's not the item that's broken, it's a switch is out of position on the panel. So get to know your electrical system and be somewhat confident that you're going to put it in the hand of strangers and that they are going to take the care to follow the notes that you have given them and give your boat the care that they would give to their own boat. One last thing on the electrical system is your cord. On the Here's To Us, we have a Glendinning retractable DC operated motor that retracts. I'm going to let some of that out, and there it's available for them to plug into and get the system charged up if they have to. So in this video we talked about, hey, why would you want to store your boat, the various options for storing your boat, and we kind of centered on my favorite, which is indoor heated storage. And we went through the process of getting all the major systems ready to be stored, wrote that down, communicated with the yard, had a technician come on board, make sure they understood it, and then put it in the hands of that yard master to get the boat into winter storage and say goodbye. So in the next video, I'm going to go through bit by bit, piece by piece, tell you what I have communicated to the yard that I want done on the boat. And I'm going to be using my rum book, repairs, upgrades, and maintenance. There's some repairs that I want to get done on the boat. There are some upgrades that I want to get done on the boat, and there are some maintenance items. One other major deal of getting ready to leave the boat is packing, and what are you going to take off the boat? The great thing about inside winter storage is you don't have to take a lot of those things that you're worrying about freezing off the boat, but there are going to be things that you want to take off the boat, and you're going to want to remember what is on the boat. And so we did a series of videos and also a recorder to say what is on the boat, because in 7 months when you come back, you're not going to remember, hey, was that on the boat? Was that not on the boat? So that's something you'll want to do. Thanks for your attention during this video. We'll talk to you on the next one about the specifics of what we asked to get done and what actually got done on the Here's To Us.